So I think that for a long time we haven't focused on retrofit, and we've always called it different things. We've called it refurbishment, we've got it improvements, we've got it renovation. Now we have this kind of all wraparound phrase called retrofit. And you know what? I think it's probably sensible we do that, and I think it's going to draw out a lot of people who are more interested in retrofit than we think in our organisation, with a view to perhaps improving how we do it. In terms of standards, I've probably written standards for longer than is healthy. So way back to when we were talking about how we measure the performance of buildings, how we measure how heat transfers through walls and roofs, and right the way back to the kind of physics of buildings. More recently, it's been about retrofit and developing standards that help the UK with retrofit. So the most recent standard that I've worked on has been the retrofit assessment standard, which is very closely aligned to the work we do here at the RSCS. And that's all about taking a building before we retrofit it and having a really good look round it first. A survey, in essence, an assessment. Then we can start to understand the building. Then we make sure that disasters don't happen in the future by putting the wrong measures onto a building or into a building. And to be fair, for a long time we've done that. We've done an EPC, which is a fair thing to do, and taken everything we need from that EPC. What we have to start doing is doing rigorous assessments, making sure that we fully understand the building before we start to literally spend tens of thousands of pounds on it. Let's not forget, the occupants in the building want it to be right as well, for health, for well-being, and for cost effect. RSS as an organisation full of people who are experts in property has a kind of duty, if you like, to get retrofit right, whether advising clients, whether assessing buildings that have been retrofit, or whether assessing buildings that are going to retrofit and managing that process. We now have the RSCS Residential Retrofit Standard, which looks at the complete process from start to end, from assessment right through to evaluation. We have an army of people that are going out every day, all day, looking at buildings that may have been retrofit in their lifespan, and they might have issues as well, you know, in part of the home buy process. And our role really as experts is to get people to get it right to start with, make sure it is right at the end, and then when we're out there observing properties as we do, then to make sure it's right as it stands now as well. So I think any professional sector brings independence, and I think when the clients can trust us to get it right, to make sure that we're assessing the buildings right, we're recommending the right things for the building, and then we're going back and checking that the works have been done correctly and the building's performing as we need it to be and as it's expected to be, then I think that's our role, is to make sure it's right from start to end. So I think for RSCS members, I think it's plain to me that as surveyors just working out there in the field, whether it's in retrofit or out of retrofit, we're going to see a lot more of it. When we're assessing buildings for home buyer reports, we will be seeing air source heat pumps and many PV installations and things. And I think it's our duty to make sure that those installs are right when they go in, they are measured at the end, and when we're out there looking at buildings in general, that the client understands if something's going wrong with that measure, because many of us fundamentally don't understand how some of these technologies work. They're not complicated and they're easy to understand. But I think that our skills as surveyors maybe just need to kind of be developed in terms of making sure we're up to date absolutely with the latest technologies and spotting when things are going wrong for our clients. I write many standards, and I can safely say that I do them all for free. I'm generally not paid to write standards. But when the standard goes out into the real world, it's often charged behind a paywall, which is really frustrating, because there should be zero barriers to doing retrofit right. We can all stand here with politicians and experts and talk about how retrofit should be done in a glorious way, but if someone has got to pay to read about the retrofit standards, that fills me with a bit of woe, to be honest. We can take a typical document, the past 2035 document, and we can look at all the references in the back, and they add up to tens of thousands of pounds if we need full access to everything. Now, I would strongly advocate to experts, to standards groups, to politicians, to any leaders, really, anyone who will listen, that every single document that we need to get retrofit right should be 100% free. They should all be in one place, easy to find, kept up to date, searchable, downloadable, and just easier and free. I think that would be my cry for help. The sensible way to innovate and standardise is quite straightforward. It's what I do on a daily basis. So I've got two hats that I wear. I sit on the SAP Scientific Integrity Group, so all of our energy works, a lot of the energy works in the UK comes through the UK energy model, SAP. But there's a series of things that have to be passed to get into that SAP model. So that SAP SIG group helps to do that. But I also have another hat where I test products in the Salford Energy House, which is part of my labs. Well, I don't run it anymore, but I run Energy House 2, which looks at new build and also some retrofit now in the future. So what we've got to do is make sure that we're all trying to test in the same way. We're all trying to elicit proper information, not just kind of really, really tiny field trials and things like that. We need to do lab tests, field trials, good data analytics, and good follow-ups and good reports that people can understand. And that will help us to kind of bring these new innovations through. If we don't innovate, we're really kind of in a messy place. Also, what we don't want to do is get things into the energy model that are bad. Okay, so we hear scare stories around things like thermal paints that offer a 30% saving. They don't deliver anywhere near a 30% saving. Our laboratory tests line something similar on average between 3 and 9%. They're just nowhere near 30% of your heating bill savings. So what we have to do is try and stop people trying to take the quick and easy way out and it not working, and doing it properly, founded on proper evidence. So the stuff that gets tested and the stuff that goes in the models. But it's also a long process. It takes too long and it probably costs too much. And it's the same as the standards. We need to streamline it. Government needs to put some money into it, and we need to do it quicker.